Welcome to the Individual Income Tax Training video. This training will walk you through the preparation of an IRS Form 1040 Individual Income Tax Return in the worksheet view. During this training, we will cover the preparation of an intermediate level individual tax return. We will cover some of the more common items that you will usually see during the preparation of a return. However, this training will not cover every type of situation or item that you will see. For more information about specific situations, forms, or schedules, please refer to your senior supervisor. Alright, now let's get started. In order to open the tax software, go to the Start menu, select All Programs, then scroll to Pro System FX Tax. Then you'll go to the year for the return that you will be preparing. The tax software will open and it will look something like this. You select on the folder in the upper left hand corner to open the return. Here you are able to search for a specific client by client ID or by name. And also the previous returns that you've worked on will be here. Our client today that we will be working on is 01001 John Doe. This is what the return will look like once it is opened. We will also need to open engagement. If you do not already have engagement open, you can find it at the Start menu, All Programs, Pro System FX Engagement, and you can click on it. Once that's open, the screen should look something like this. Make sure that you are using the BT Central File Room. You can scroll to the client ID. Here we'll be working particularly from the PFS tax training. Once the binder opens, it will look something like this. We will also need the 2011 training work papers. If you click on the PDF file, it'll open up and look something like this. When you open the organizer, the first page oftentimes will be the tax organizer. This is the official information gathering source that we use to send our clients so that they can complete and return the information that we need to complete their tax return. If you scroll through this organizer, you will be able to be familiarized with the types of income and deductions that you will likely see while working on this client. As you can see, the client's personal documents have been scanned into this PDF file to include everything that will be needed to complete their tax return. So after you finish reviewing the PDF work paper file, now you're ready to begin the preparation of the tax return. So if you open up the tax return, the first page that will open is the General Information section. This can be found under General, Basic Data. As you see, we've already completed the home state, filing status, and the personal information. If you are doing a return for the first time, this information may not already be preloaded. Alright, there are a few things in the tax organizer that we need to point out. First, this first page will have the client information as well as the client address. If we scroll to the next page, we have basically a topical index, and the third page starts the questions, page 1 of 3. These are questions that the client will fill out
when we send them the tax organizer, and when they return it to us, we need to review to see if any important information has changed or if there have been significant tax events during the year. The default answer is no, with the highlighted answers being yes. So one thing that you will need to look for as you're preparing this return is any answers in the yes column. So as we see here, under dependents, did you pay for child care while you worked or looked for work? They've answered yes. As well as down here, did you pay student loan interest? The client has answered yes, and so on and so forth. Any answers where the client has selected yes, we will need to review other client information as well as make a list for your manager or supervisor so that you can discuss these tax events with the manager and how they will affect the outcome of the tax return. So as you see on this page 1 of 3, there are 3 items that we will need to discuss with our manager. As we go to the next page, there's 2 more, and so on and so forth. Now on the personal information page, this is where we will get all the personal information for the client. If the client is a new client, this is where we will need to gather the information in order to open the tax return and get the return started for the client. If this is a repeat client or a client that we've done tax work for in the past, many of this information will already be preloaded into the tax software. Alright, now let's go back to the tax software. When we open up the tax software, we'll see that the default opening screen is under General, Basic Data. As you can see, the client information has been preloaded into the General section, including home state, filing status, taxpayer and spouse information including name, social security number, date of birth, occupation, their street address, daytime phone number, and email. As we scroll down, we'll see there's been preloaded information under dependents. Their dependent first name and last name is loaded in, as well as their social security number, their relationship, which includes a drop-down box, their dependent code. In this case, we have a child living with the taxpayer, which is the default designation, and their birth date and the total months lived at home. The next section that will need to be completed is the direct deposit section. As you can see, we have already preloaded the client's information into these sections. Under direct deposit, there's a drop down box and we have selected pro forma only. This will be the default unless your manager or supervisor tells you otherwise. We have loaded the name of the institution as well as the routing number and the account number. We have also selected the type of depositor. So this one has a checking account, or it could be a traditional savings account, an IRA, HSA, so on and so forth. We have selected all cities and states with regard to the state bank information for this section. So this is all the information that you will need to complete for the general basic data section. Remember, all this information should be found in the client organizer. So here's the personal information, and here is where the client has input their direct deposit and withdrawal information. Now let's go back to the tax software. Now the next section that we will do is under General, Electronic Filing. The specifics on electronic filing will be covered in the processing of an individual tax return video. If we start at the top under the General section, we'll see that we have marked electronic filing, yes. We have selected to file all states electronically. We have selected not to print non-fileable message on signature form. And this is all you need to do under the General section. Under the paperless e-file section, number 2, we have entered the taxpayer's PIN, the spouse's PIN, as well as Bennett Thrasher's self-selected PIN. Next, we have selected to enter the taxpayer's PIN on their behalf. Under Input 14, we have also included the taxpayer's prior year PIN and the spouse's prior year PIN. Next, we'll go to Section 5. Under Section 5, this is where we select which states we would like to file electronically. And we have selected Georgia for this client. That is all that you will need to do under the State section. Next, we'll go to Section 9, Additional Information. This section is used when a supporting document needs to be added to the electronic file of the tax return. In this case, we have selected yes for 8949 sales and other dispositions of capital assets. This will be specifically covered later during this training. Next, we'll go to the General tab, Return Options. As you can see, only 2 sections have information under the return options. First, we'll go to Section 2, Form Printing Options. Under Form Printing Options, you will need to select Form 4868, Automatic Extension of Time to File, if the return will be extended. You will select it from the drop-down box here. This will allow you to force the extension to print with the tax return. Next, we'll go under Section 6, Preparer Information. Under this section, this is where we will select which manager or partner's P10 will be provided on the front of the tax return. In order to select a manager or partner, you can double-click in the box, and then this dialog box will show. You should select the manager or partner that will be signing the return from the list here. The next section that we will complete is under the General tab, Letters and Filing Instructions. As you can see, there are 2 sections under this tab that have information. We'll start with number 6, Transmittal Letter. The transmittal letter is the letter that the client will receive with the return, giving them instructions on how to properly file the return, as well as letting them know any additional details that they need to do in completing the filing of their return. As you can see here, the first thing that you will need to select is to suppress transmittal letter for extensions. This will force the software to create a return transmittal letter and not an extension transmittal letter. The language will be very different from the two. However, if you're doing an extension letter, you can simply leave this blank. As you can see, under Section 6, Transmittal Letter, we have selected to suppress transmittal letter for extensions. You will need to select this option when you are filing the tax return. However, if you're producing an extension or you would like an extension transmittal letter, you can select if they will be sent by the preparer or if they will be sent by the taxpayer. The next option is we will need to select the name of the signing accountant. Here, you can type in the name of the partner or shareholder who will be signing the T letter. Oftentimes, the person who is signing the T letter will be the same as the person signing the return. However, sometimes that is not the case. Here, we have entered first name first, middle initial, last name in this box. Next, we'll need to include a salutation for the client. We have entered Dear John and Mary, and we've typed it into this box. Next, we can go to section 9, which is called paragraphs. Under the paragraph section, we can adjust the transmittal letter so that certain paragraphs or wording can be included in the transmittal letter. As you can see here, we have selected to suppress the penalty language or wording in the T letter for the federal as well as the state return. If we go below, we have also selected to include language that says, we recommend that you use certified mail with postmarked receipts for proof of timely filing. Next, we'll start on the Income and Deductions tab, Wages, Salaries, and Tips section. Under Section 1, Wages and Salaries, we will see that the employer name, the wage amount, as well as the various other W-2 information has been entered. This information can be found in the PDF work papers under the W-2 labeled King and Spalding. As you can see, we have input the boxes on the W-2 as they correspond to the tax input. If you select the Detail button, you will see that the input will mirror exactly the W-2 in the PDF work paper. When entering a W-2, you must remember to select taxpayer or spouse, and the employee's Social Security number will automatically populate. You will also need to input the employer identification number, the employer's name and address, as well as all the information located on the W-2, including Box 12 amounts. You will need to select the appropriate code for the particular line item, as you can see here. As we scroll down to the state section, you can see that the appropriate state, the state ID, as well as state wages and state tax withheld has been entered. And again, all this information can be found on the client's W-2, as seen here. Okay, so let's go back to the tax software. As you can see, we have completed the IRS W-2 input for John. So now let's go back to the summary. And with the wages and salary section complete, we'll move on to the next section. Next, we'll work on the Income and Deductions tab, the Interest section. Under Section 1, Interest Schedule B, this is where you put interest income that the taxpayer received during the year. This information can be found by going to the PDF work papers, under this 1099, you can see that John Doe received interest from USAA. The account number as well as the interest amount is stated here. These amounts will need to be input into the tax return software. So let's go back to the software. We have input USAA Federal Savings Bank as well as the last 4 digits of the account number here. This will allow us to distinguish what interest amount goes with what account. As you can see, we've input the interest amounts here. Next, we'll input the U.S. Trust interest income. To locate these amounts, we must go back to the PDF work papers. As you can see, on the U.S. Trust 1099, we have an amount for interest income received during the year located here. This amount should be input into the tax return software. As you can see, we put the U.S. Trust interest along with the last 4 digits of the account number into the payer box and the interest income amount into the interest income box. Next, we'll go to Section 2, Foreign Account Information. Under the Foreign Account Information, we have selected No for the box labeled Held an Interest in a Foreign Account. This is information that you will receive from the client or from your manager or supervisor, as well as located in the PDF work papers. One additional thing to note here is that if the client had tax-exempt interest, these amounts will be input into the same section. The state non-taxable and state taxable portion will be input here. This amount can be found in the PDF work papers under the Summary of Tax-Exempt Income. All clients will not have statements that look exactly the same. However, this information can be found within the 1099 that the taxpayer receives. Here, the amounts would already be broken out for tax exempt for Georgia residents and taxable for Georgia residents. However, as you can see, we do not have any amounts related this year. Next, we'll go to the Dividends section. This can be found by going to Income and Deductions, Dividends. As you can see, we have input the payer name as well as the dividend amounts here. These can be found in the PDF work papers. As you can see, under the U.S. Trust 1099 for 2011, the total ordinary dividends as well as qualified dividends and related information can all be found here. These include unrecaptured 1250 gain, non-dividend distributions, also known as non-taxable distributions, and foreign tax paid. Now, we'll go back to the tax software to input this information. As you can see, we've input the ordinary dividend amount, qualified dividend amount, total capital gain distribution, unrecaptured section 1250 amount, as well as the non-taxable distribution amount. If you would like a different view of the input, you can select Detail. As you can see, the Detail view will give you the box numbers as they correspond to the PDF work paper. Next, we'll input information under Section 7, Foreign. Under the Foreign section, we have input the country as well as the total foreign dividend amount and the total foreign qualified dividend amount. These amounts can be found in the PDF work papers. We have the total foreign income, and we have it separated based on the qualified and non-qualified. These amounts will need to be input into the tax software. As you can see here, they are separated accordingly. Next, we'll go under Income and Deductions, Business section. This client has a Schedule C consulting business. For the Schedule C business, we'll first type in the business name, the taxpayer to whom the business relates, so taxpayer or spouse or joint. We'll also include the principal business, which in this case is consulting, the street address, as well as the business code. If you double click in the business code, you will be able to select the area of focus that the business operates in. This code should be selected based on manager approval and consulting. Next, we'll go to the Income and Cost of Goods Sold section for the Schedule C business. As you can see, we've input the gross receipts amount, and these amounts can be found from the PDF work papers. As you can see here, the client has supplied an income and expenses worksheet that details the income during the year. As you can see, we have our income of $1,000, our supplies, mileage, meals, so on and so forth. Now let's go back to the software. Under the expenses section, we have input the expenses as detailed here, as well as professional fees and the business license fee, which does not have a particular line outlined above. So these will go under other expenses. Next, we'll look at Section 5, Auto Information, Depreciation, and Listed Property questions. The client has a vehicle that they use for their Schedule C business. As you can see, we've input the vehicle information here. This information can be found in the PDF work papers. As you can see, the client has outlined the various expenses. In addition, the manager has added a note that gives you exactly the vehicle information for the current year. This information will be input into the tax return software. Now, back in the software, we'll go to Detail under Section 5. This will allow us to put the date of service, related automobile expenses, In this case, we have selected the mileage, and we have put 12,000 miles in the box for total miles, and we've also put total business miles of 46. Next, we'll go to the depreciation section, and here's where we can input the description of the property, the asset number, the listed property code, which in this case is automobile subject to limits, and the method, which is makers. Next, we'll work on the Income and Deductions tab, Gains and Losses section. This is where we will report stock, securities, and other non-passive transactions. If we go to section 1, we can see that we have input amounts from U.S. Trust. These amounts can be found in the PDF work papers. Starting in 2011, more detail must be provided related to Schedule D transactions. The short-term and long-term security transactions must be divided between covered and non-covered. The covered transactions are transactions where the basis of the transaction has been reported to the IRS. And the non-covered are transactions where the basis was not reported to the IRS. As you can see, the U.S. Trust 1099 has separated the short-term covered security transactions from the various other types of transactions. Since this has been done, we can simply put summaries in the tax return input and attach these pages from the 1099 for greater detail. So if we go to the tax software, as you can see, we have separated covered short-term, non-covered short-term, as you can see, we have input covered short-term, non-covered short-term, and non-covered long-term. Within the description, we have put See Attachment A. This will let the IRS know that we have attached certain documents that will give them further detail on the summary of the sales price as well as the cost basis and other information. To find these amounts, you must look inside the PDF work papers. So this is the beginning of our short-term covered security transactions. And as we scroll through the PDF work papers, we'll see that there are several. As we get to the summary for the short-term covered security transactions, you can see that we have the gross proceeds, the tax basis or tax cost, as well as the gain or loss. These amounts will be input into the tax return software. As you can see, they've been input here. When doing attachments, the date that should be used is 999999 for date acquired and 12/31/11 for the date sold. As you can see, we have selected for the term code short term, and we have also selected the code for the 1099B, which in this case is 1099 basis reported to the IRS. For the non-covered transactions, we will select basis not reported to the IRS. For the total non-covered, we will find this in the PDF work papers. Here's the beginning of the short-term non-covered security transaction detail. As we scroll down, we will come to the summary of the short-term non-covered security transactions. And these amounts we will input into the tax software. For the non-covered long-term transactions, we'll go back to our PDF work papers. And here's the beginning of the long-term non-covered security transaction detail. And as we scroll down, we'll see the summary here. These amounts will be input into the tax return software, as has been done right here. Under Income and Deductions tab, IRAs, Pensions, and Annuities. Under the first section, Distributions from Pensions, Annuities, and IRAs, we see that we have input RBC Capital Markets as well as a gross distribution. This section is used for distribution from retirement plans. These amounts can be found by going to the PDF work papers. And as you can see, John and Mary have received a distribution from RBC Capital Markets. These amounts should be input in the tax return software. By selecting the Detail button, you will see that the input mirrors exactly the 1099-R in the work papers. The amount should be input as seen here. Paying particular attention to box 2B, taxable amount not determined, total distribution, as well as the distribution code. Next, we're going to work on the rental property. To work on the rental property, we'll go to Income and Deductions, Rent and Royalty. First, we'll start at the General tab. As you can see, we have input the address under the kind of property. We have included how the property is held under T, S, and J, and we've selected J for joint. And we have also given this activity an entity number. Next, we went to the property location and entered the address, city, state, so on and so forth. A very important line is the activity code. This activity code will tell the software how to treat the income and expenses as it relates to the rental property. As you can see, the default is active rental of real estate. Next, we have other passive activity, investment income, non-investment income, materially participating real estate professional, and finally, subject to recharacterization rules. In our case, we're going to select 1 for other passive activity. This information can be found in the PDF work paper here. As you can see, we have the address. You can also see that we have rental income and related expenses. These amounts will be input in the tax return software. As we go to the next section, income, we see line 1 is rental income, and we have input the amount of rent collected during the year in this box. Next is expenses. As you can see, there are several line items ranging from advertising, insurance, mortgage interest, repairs, utilities. These are all listed in the PDF work paper in the information that the client has provided. If there are expenses listed that are not found here, they would go under other expenses, and you would just type a description and the related amount. Next, we'll do section 7, which is related to depreciation and amortization. As you can see, we have input this as rental property, the date placed in service, the method as well as the life, and the cost. We have also input accumulated depreciation. For greater detail, you can select the Detail button, and it brings up this screen. As you can see, it has all the information that we have input, as well as further detail related to different sections. AMT, bonus depreciation, so on and so forth. If we return back to our PDF work papers, we see that the total mortgage interest is $18,400 $516. If we scroll to the very next page, we have a statement from Wells Fargo Bank for mortgage interest. This is Form 1098. This shows that property address, the beginning and ending principal balance, as well as total interest paid during the year. We have $17,663. If we scroll to the next page, we see an additional mortgage interest paid from Wells Fargo of $853, which gives us our total on the previous page of $18,516. Next, we're going to work on partnership K1 input. We can access this by going to Income and Deductions, Partnership Pass-Through. We'll start with Rick Bennett LLC. As you click on Rick Bennett LLC, the General section will open up. First, we'll start by inputting J for joint, and this will populate the partner name, address. As you see, we have John and Mary Doe here. Next, you'll need to put in the partnership information. This can be found from the PDF workpaper. Next, you can see that the partnership's EIN, name and address, where they filed their IRS return, is all listed here. When it comes to input, we'll first start with the left side of the K1, which includes the type of partner, beginning and ending profit sharing, loss, and capital percentages, debt allocation, as well as section L of partner capital count analysis. So if we go back to our tax return, we'll see there's a place to put the EIN, the name and address of the partnership, as well as where they filed their return. Then next, we'll have a place for general partner or LLC member manager, domestic partner, so on and so forth. The beginning and ending partnership percentages, the amount of recourse debt, beginning and ending capital account, as well as current year activity. So now we're ready to input the information from the K1. So as you go back to our PDF workpaper, we'll see that Part 3 has various lines from ordinary business income to net rental real estate income, so on and so forth. The best way to input these K1 investments is just line by line. So as we see here, there's a loss of $18,815, interest income of $4,503, and so on and so forth. One thing to note, in other income, or any box that has a star related to it, or a C statement, as we see here, we will need to flip down to various other pages to get more in detail on the input or the nature of the item of expense or income. So as we scroll down for box 11, we see this is other portfolio income from schedule of activities, and we have an amount here. And as you can see, there are various other details related to boxes and line items in the K1. So as we go back to our tax software, we'll need to go to the next section, which is activity. We see our activity number, which is automatically populated. Next, we'll need a class code. The default is other passive, and that's what we'll select for this investment. And as you can see, we have input the ordinary business income, interest income, dividends, so on and so forth. As you can see, the lines on the input actually match up with the lines on the K1. So box 1 or line 1 matches directly to our PDF work paper box 1 or line 1. One final note. If you have a state K1 listed in the PDF work papers, you would select the state here, and then input the ordinary business income, net rental real estate income, so on and so forth here. Next, we'll work on other adjustments. You can find other adjustments by going to Income and Deductions, Other Adjustments. We'll work on Section 3, Other Adjustments and Student Loan Interest. As we see, Section 4 has student loan interest paid. You can input student loan interest deduction and enter the amount here. The amount can be found in the PDF work paper here. The amount in the relating input boxes can be found here. If you go back to the tax return, we see $1,522 input as the amount. Next, we'll work on the itemized deductions or Schedule A input. To find this, you can go to Income and Deductions, Itemized Deductions. First, we'll start with Section 4, Taxes Paid. As you can see here, we've input real estate taxes and personal property taxes, or ad valorem taxes. These amounts can be found from the PDF work paper, and here we have a statement for the ad valorem tax paid. Keep in mind that only the ad valorem tax and not any tag fees or mail fees or even late fees are not included. So only the tag fee of $88 will be included as a deductible item under itemized deductions. So if we go back to our tax return software, we select the green arrow, we'll see that we have had further detailed input related to the 2002 Honda and the 2004 Lexus, and we've included the amounts here for a sum of $339. For real estate taxes, we can see that on the mortgage interest statement, there's an amount for real estate taxes in box 5, $5,512. Also on the same page, we see that we have interest applied or interest paid on the mortgage. This will also go on Schedule A. So as we go back to our tax return software and go to Section 8, Home Mortgage Interest Paid, we see that we have an amount there of $14,832, which includes these two amounts here. As we go back to our PDF work paper, we see that $11,883 was from this first statement, and $2,947 is related to home equity line of credit on this second statement. Next, if you go to where the client has provided cash contributions, we see that we have total cash donations of $6,625, as well as non-cash items. These amounts should be input in the tax return software
under contributions, cash 50% limit for the cash amounts, and for the non-cash amounts there is a special input section. To get to this special input section, we'll go to Income and Deductions, 8283 Non-Cash Charitable Contributions. As you see here, we have selected J for joint, the contribution code of non-cash 50% limit, which is a default. We have put the name of the donee organization as well as the address, the description of the property. For date acquired, we have put in 99/99, which will show up as various in the tax return software on the form. The date contributed, the cost basis, as well as the fair market value. This input should be used when you have greater than $500 worth of non-cash contributions. If you have less than $500 of non-cash contributions, you will go and input under Itemized Deductions, Contributions, Other Contributions, with the code of non-cash contributions. The last item to be input under Itemized Deductions is under Section 18, Tax Preparation Fee. As we see here, we have tax preparation fee of $2,300, and that can be found in the PDF work paper. We see the invoice that the client received for services from our firm as related to their prior year tax return. Next, under Other Deductions, we will input the management fees from U.S. Trust, the amount $25,580. This amount can be found from the PDF work paper, the tax information letter, under Allocable Fees. Now, let's work on the Other Income section. You can access the Other Income section by going to Income and Deductions, Other Income. We'll work on Section 5, Refunds of State and Local Income Taxes. As you can see, we have input the Georgia refund related to 2010 for $2,124. This amount can be found by going to the PDF work paper and the 1099-G received from the state of Georgia. If we return back to our software, you can see that there's an input section for adjusted gross income, taxable income, so on and so forth for 2010, 2009, 2008. This is used for the tax benefit rule calculation. If you have a tax return that you have previously done or the firm has previously done in years past, this information will be automatically populated. If this is a new return or a new client that we have not prepared a tax return for, this information will need to be completed from a prior tax return. This will allow the software to properly calculate how much of a benefit the taxpayer received from this state income tax refund. Next, we'll need to complete the state tax worksheet. You can find the state tax worksheet by going to the engagement binder, work paper 4, 2011 state tax worksheet. The state tax worksheet helps to reconcile Schedule A state taxes paid in 2011, calendar year 2011 Georgia tax payments, as well as federal tax payments. As you can see, we have input federal amounts as well as the state amount in these various different cells. This will give you a sum of total federal taxes paid as well as total state taxes paid. Any amounts from withholding from W-2s, 1099s, or even K-1s should be input into this spreadsheet. As we can see, if we return back to our tax software and we go to the government forms, 1040, and we scroll down to page 2, the federal tax payment amount or withheld from W-2 is listed here. If we go back to Schedule A, itemized deductions, we'll see on box 5 that state and local income taxes paid are listed here, and this amount matches our spreadsheet, and they should always tie. Alright, now we're going to work on the extensions. You can access the input by going to Other, Extensions. Under the first tab, Automatic Extension, you'll see that we have selected Mandatory Extension under line 4. We have also selected Extension granted to due date print option for federal and all states and cities. We have input Georgia as a state code, and this is where you will put any income or estimated tax payment information. This information, if applicable, will be found in the PDF work paper. Alright, now that we're completed with our federal return input, let's get started on our state return. To access the state return input, you'll go to Tax Authority, and you'll scroll down from federal to the applicable state, in this case, Georgia. Most of the tax information that we have already input for the federal return will actually flow directly to the Georgia state return. However, we'll go over a few areas where you may see some differences. Under residency, you'll see a residency code for non-resident or part-year resident, as well as various other input boxes. If we go back to Georgia, go under income and deductions, we have additions or subtractions that are specific to the state of Georgia. One common one is non-Georgia muni interest. This is usually located on the taxpayer's 1099. If there were special itemized deductions or adjustments, they would be put here. One that we see from time to time is investment income from income earned by non-taxable Georgia assets. Next, we'll go to estimates and underpayments. If you would like to prepare Georgia estimates, you would do that here. You start out by going to either prevent an estimate if you do not want estimate vouchers to appear, or mandatory estimates, or so on and so forth. We'll select prevent an estimate. Next will be credits. If the taxpayer purchased credits during the year that are applicable to the Georgia return, you will put them here. Under other business credits, oftentimes we see low-income housing credits that the client has purchased to use against their Georgia tax. And finally, if you were doing an amended return for the state of Georgia or a power of attorney, you would go to this section under Georgia, Other.